Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So where are we headed today?
So today we'll be in a place that consists of two peninsulas.
You couldn't possibly think I would guess a place.
This place is the only place in the world to have a floating post office that has been operational for the last 125 years.
I need another.
This place became the first English-speaking government to abolish the death penalty for all ordinary crimes.
Can you repeat that?
This place became the first English-speaking government to abolish...
So you said place, which tells me it's not a state, which tells me we're not in the United States. But I don't know.
It's the largest producer of blueberries in the world. They produce 100 million pounds of blueberries each year. It's a lot of antioxidants. And I know I gave you 4 hints already, but this one was too good to pass up. I was really on a roll. This place has a city with about 1,200 residents. In the 1920s, it became known as the magic capital of the world. And the name of this city, Claire, it made me think of you. And its name is Colon.
You have problems.
Any guesses where we'll be today?
I have no idea.
We're going to be in Michigan in the 1980s.
You're a challenged individual. That's a lot of blueberries.
It's a lot of blueberries. I also read that they have like 11.3 million apple trees.
Do they have a blueberry festival?
I don't know. That's a lot of blueberries, though. I thought of your pup, and she would absolutely love it there.
She does like picking blueberries.
Okay, and I know this doesn't have to do with my case, and we won't get sidetracked on this, but so you know how Michigan borders 4 of the 5 Great Lakes?
Mm-hmm.
Which I had to explain to my daughter, who's in middle school, what the 5 Great Lakes were.
Sounds like a road trip to me.
Jason wanted me to ask you, and everyone else out there, which lake the Loch Ness Monster was in. I did some blinking.
I didn't think that was in the United States. I thought that was like an England thing.
Well, I did do some blinking at my dear sweet love, and we had to have us a chit chat about good old Nessie because he thought that the Loch Ness Monster was in one of the Great Lakes, and I had to explain that it is a mythical creature claimed to have been seen in like the Scottish Highlands in the lake called Loch Ness. That's why it's the Loch Ness Monster, you know, the name. He insisted that he wasn't the only one that thought that the Loch Ness Monster was in the Great Lakes.
Well, I'm sure. I've met people who thought Washington, D.C. was the capital of Washington and will argue that it's not on the West Coast, the state that is.
All right. Them education systems are very concerning. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about a man who is quite troubled. His name is John Douglas White. He was born May 20th, 1957. He has a sister named Christina. She was about 3 years younger than John. They had a pretty normal childhood. He had no head injuries that anyone was aware of. He was a bit of a troublemaker in high school, but nothing crazy. He and his friends would open like the girls' locker room door and yell, "Hey, we need a maxi pad." Just stupid boy stuff, you know?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, boys are weird. But anyway, John was also a bit of a mouthy teen. He was a habitual liar, and he liked to lie about literally everything. John was constantly making up stories, and his parents didn't know what to do about it, so they would spank him. And even when...
Is that a teen?
Even when John was in high school, he was getting spankings for being a liar.
Sounds like somebody enjoyed the spankings, giving him, that is.
So I thought the same thing because...
The original spankotherapy!
Now you're going to have to explain that because...
I'm not. This is your love child.
What? You take that back.
Andrea doesn't want to let everyone know that she's in spankotherapy.
Ew. No. So I sent Claire... Wasn't that like a Judge Judy?
No.
Who?
It wasn't Judge Judy. It was some other stupid... I don't believe it was a real court stupid TV snippet on Facebook.
Yeah, and it was some girl suing her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend because she gave him $1,500 and he used it for therapy, but the therapy he chose to get was some dude spanking his butt. So
that's not completely true. There was also rubbing.
Oh, yeah. He would rub it out too. It's disgusting. Anyway, so John and his sister Christina were pretty close. Like, they were best friends. And then one day in their teen years, John threatened to kill Christina. After that, their relationship wasn't so close, but they still remained.
Hold up, but over what?
So,
Was she diddling one of his friends?
no. So they used to play a game.
Ugh.
I guess their rooms were kind of across from each other, kind of like how we grew up with the way our rooms were set up upstairs. John and Christina would sit there and chuck stuff from one room to the other when they were supposed to be going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she was throwing stuffed animals at him, and then he wasn't throwing them back. So she kept throwing more and more stuff. And then finally, he came in her room and told her if she threw anything else, he was going to fucking kill her. So that was the last time they ever played that game.
Well, it sounds like a stupid game.
It does. John and Christina also had a paper route that they did together. And when Christina was on her side of the route.
Oh, so you mean she was working out when she was throwing stuff back and forth, preparing for their paper route?
Yeah, she was. Their parents probably knew they sat there and chucked stuff back and forth. And they're like, let's put these children to work.
He was just embarrassed because her arm was better than his.
Yeah. Well, when Christina was on her side of the route, a neighbor's dog had attacked Christina.
Oh.
When the kids had gotten back to the house, John overheard Christina crying to their parents and showing the bruises that the dog had left on her.
Mm-hmm.
John didn't say anything, and then the next day, Christina was on her route again. The dog was gone.
He killed the dog.
A few days later, the kids in the neighborhood told Christina that dog was found in the woods and it had been shot and killed. Later, John writes a book, and he admits that he did shoot and kill that dog.
Dispose of the dog. Well,
yeah. But since there's nothing else really significant, like those are the major highlights of John's childhood, we're going to skip to his young adult years. He did develop a little bit of a temper.
I haven't heard of him throwing a temper.
Threatening to kill your sister is a bit much. Taking the neighbor's dog out and shooting it.
It attacked his sister. They do their paper out every day. I mean...
Yeah. Well, John joined the Navy. John would be stationed in Japan for 2 years, and during that time, he told everybody a story about how he met him a woman, and he took her back to his room to, so they could do the sex in.
She turned out to be a he?
He discovered that she was a he, and he beat the shit out of that guy.
Yeah, it's not something that you can trick easy.
Sure can't. And then John began dating one of his sister's friends from high school. She soon became pregnant, and they got married. So at this point, John is 22. I'm guessing around then is when he got out of the military. I think he only did like a 4-year thing because I couldn't really find when he got out.
Okay.
But Christina was watching the news one day and saw her brother's name pop up on the screen as the news anchor was like, John Douglas White has been arrested for attacking his neighbor. And she was like, what the hell? John's neighbor was a 17-year-old named Theresa Etherton. One afternoon, Theresa was at the house with John and his wife when John invited her into his basement to check out a stock car racetrack that he'd built.
Okay, I think that's weird.
Why?
A grown-ass man invited a 17-year-old girl into his basement to show what?
He had built a racetrack. I guess he has like a little stock car.
Yeah. You don't think that's weird?
So in reality, they wanted to smoke some weed. And keep in mind...
I don't care. He's a grown-ass man. She's a tween.
Well, keep in mind, he's 22, she's 17, and they go down...
He's also married. And doesn't he have a child by this point?
She's pregnant.
Okay. She's 17.
Yeah.
He's a grown-ass man.
And they wanted to go smoke some weed. So they go down in the basement, and all of a sudden, John's wife heard screams, and John appeared in their kitchen, covered in blood.
Who?
John claimed that Theresa came at him with a knife, and he did have what appeared to be defensive wounds on his hand. And he said he blacked out while he was defending himself. So his wife calls 911. John ends up being arrested. It was nothing short of a miracle that Theresa survived the brutal assault she endured from her 22-year-old neighbor. And during the trial, the truth comes out. Without warning, John had attacked the teenager from behind with a knife. He began stabbing her with a honey knife. The first jab came from behind, landing right under her shoulder blade. Horrified, Theresa looked at John, and he was smiling at her.
Why would he do that when somebody's home?
I have no idea. As he smiled at Theresa, he ripped the knife from her back and plunged it into her chest. Again, he pulled the knife out of her before plunging it into her flesh again and again. Over and over, John stabbed Theresa. John then reached out and wiped blood away from Theresa's mouth and kissed her. After he was finished with this vicious attack, John held Theresa's hand in his and said, "You're gonna go now. I'm really sorry you had to go like this, but what the fuck? You're just a woman."
Hmm.
Right? I was like, what the fuck? But he stabbed Theresa 15 times in the chest and back and tried to strangle her. John wanted to claim he was temporarily insane. His defense attorney chose not to utilize that excuse, and a jury found John guilty of assault with the intent to commit murder, and he was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison, which I think that's insane. 5 to 10 years
Well, he didn't.
if you intended to commit murder? Really?
He wasn't successful.
The courts promised Theresa that John would never hurt anyone again.
Not in 5 to 10 years, at least.
Right? And John decided to do like the many criminals before and after him and file an appeal. Now, Theresa recovers, and one day she's standing in line at the grocery store when she heard a voice that sent chills down her spine. She turned around and was petrified to see her attempted murderer was standing there, smiling at her.
Ooh.
This piece of trash won his appeal since his defense failed to use his insanity defense. He was claiming partial amnesia, and his sentence was overturned. He was released from prison in 1983 after serving just 2 years. But don't worry, he was also given a 2 years probation, and he was told he needed to seek mandatory mental health treatment.
Did he?
Nobody warned Theresa that he was released. After getting out of prison, John began working as a long-haul trucker.
Who liked those?
I know. I seem to be finding the truckers and the Navy cases lately.
Mm-hmm.
He enjoyed telling his buddies about how the lot lizards would approach them truckers at the truck stops, and he would brag about how after he was finished with them prostitutes, he would just dump their bodies in that there dumpster. But since John was known for being a liar, everybody just assumed he was exaggerating. But along the routes that he would take, there were prostitutes that were found murdered and dumped in the dumpsters.
Not sure what to do with that information.
Right.
Like, I don't know why you would say it if it was like a just kidding, because it's weird.
It's not funny?
Yeah, and then I don't even know why you would say it if you did do it.
I have no idea. Well, John and his wife began having marital issues, and I can't imagine why.
Oh, him. A total mystery.
And at this point, they had 2 children and a third on the way. To be honest, I was surprised that she stayed with him after he stabbed the 17-year-old. I guess she had the whole love is blind situation and believed that...
Or maybe she is blind.
Maybe, or she truly believed that the 17-year-old, after she got high, attacked him.
Or that he was high and not in his right mind, all that, because he's, I would assume, up to this point, never done anything to her, and he still is the father of her children.
Yeah, but she stayed with him through all that. So around this time, it's nearly a decade after he was released from that attack on Theresa. It's 1994 now. John's working at a laundry company that did laundry for the local hospital, and John was part of the maintenance team. He would fall in love with his coworker, a woman named Vicky Sue Wall. Vicky was 26, and she was 5'3" and weighed about 130 pounds, and John at this point is around 33, 34 years old.
But he's still with the same gal.
Yeah, he's still married, and now he's cheating on her with this chick, Vicky Sue.
That's even worse, because she stuck it out when he's a piece of shit.
And went to prison? Yeah. I was like, what the heck? So John, I'd like to say he has a conscience, but then again, I know the details of him, so he does not. But he confessed to his sister, Christina, that he was in love with Vicky Sue, and his sister was like, that's messed up. You need to fess up to your wife. Can I just say that's a really shitty spot, by the way, for Christina, because that's her friend from high school and her sister-in-law for more than a decade now. And now your brother's telling you he's cheating on her?
That's because he's a weenie and is hoping she will tell her for him.
Probably. But John didn't want to tell his wife he had a mistress.
No, because then the stabbing will be a receiving time.
Mm-hmm. And then in July of 1994, Christina received a phone call around 3 or 4 in the morning from John's wife. She said John had hurt someone and now he's suicidal, but she doesn't know where he went. So Christina, she hops in her car and she went out to try to find her brother. But in the back of Christina's mind, she was like, this is really weird because also earlier on July 15th, 1994, Vicky Sue was reported missing. Police found Vicky Sue's car in the grocery store parking lot on July 17th. So police mosey on into their grocery store and they asked to see their security footage of their parking lot going back to July 10th, which is the last time family and friends had actually seen Vicky Sue. The officers find the surveillance video of Vicky Sue getting into a black pickup truck with a bearded man at the grocery store parking lot around 3 a.m. on July 11th. Police bring John in because everybody that's talking to the police is like, yeah, she's having an affair with this dude. So police bring in John, and don't you know it? He's a bearded feller and owns a black pickup truck.
But how is he married and just out and about at 3 a.m.? If Dave was gone at 3 a.m. just randomly, I would be not just tucked on in, snoozing.
I have no idea. His wife must be a saint or
blind,
extremely exhausted from raising the children, because I don't know. I would be livid if I woke up and it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and Jason wasn't here. Shoot, when I wake up and he's still playing Xbox downstairs with our 16-year-old and it's like 11, I'm like, what the heck? You ditched me.
He was home.
Yeah. Anyway, police now have John at the station. They're asking him some questions about Vicky Sue, and John does admit to the affair. He also admitted to being the one in the video that was seen picking up Vicky Sue, but he said he dropped Vicky Sue off safely. Police didn't believe him, but other than their gut feeling, they didn't have a reason to hold John. 6 agonizing weeks later for Vicky Sue's family, they finally received that dreaded call. On August 27th, 1994, Vicky Sue's remains were found. She was discovered 2 miles from that grocery store parking lot where she was last seen alive. Which, by the way, I also think the police did a horrible job canvassing the area if she was only 2 miles away. But that's just me.
That's a big area.
Yeah, but still, 6 weeks? In July? There had to be a smell.
Maybe it's a stinky town. It is near some water.
Well, Vicky Sue was found. She was naked with the exception of her shirt and bra up around her neck. She'd been dumped in a rural area, and her body was so badly decomposed that police could not determine her cause of death. They had to use dental records to positively identify her body. The police go and pick up John again, but John refused to answer any questions. Police were like, okay, John, if you're really innocent, help us help you. Take a lie detector test. If you pass that, we'll move on. But John was like, nope, not happening. And since John had a violent history, he was known to the victim, and he was being uncooperative, and he's the guy in the video, and it's his truck in the video, police go ahead and get a search warrant for John's black pickup truck. They did a luminol test, and it showed evidence of blood in several spots in John's pickup. So then John decides he's going to talk. John claims that Vicky Sue was into strangulation while having sex. John said that on July 11th, when he picked up Vicky Sue, they drove around back behind the grocery store to have sex in his truck. He was choking her, and when he finished, he let go of Vicky, and she just kind of slumped over. He nudged her, and there was no response. So rather than seek help, he opened the door to his truck and dumped her body out and then went home to his wife.
Oh.
Yeah.
He didn't even try to render any aid?
Not even close. Then he confessed to his wife about the affair and that he might have accidentally hurt Vicky Sue. So, with the state lacking any concrete evidence against John, they couldn't prove if it was in fact an accident during sex or intentional, but John decided to enter a plea of no contest to involuntary manslaughter on May 8th, 1995, so no trial would be needed. He received an 8 to 15-year sentence for that involuntary manslaughter.
He's getting a lot of short sentences.
Right? The judge told John during his sentencing, "It appears from your previous violent acts against a woman and this unexplained violent action that you have a dangerous level of self-control."
Or lack of.
That's what I thought. A few things happened while John was in prison. John's wife finally filed for a divorce.
That's because he's hardly ever home now.
The way I see it is she put up with way more than most would have, but good for her. He was also required to speak to psychologists. He admitted to the psychologist that he had uncontrollable violent sexual fantasies about wanting to kill women and have sex with their corpses. But John found God.
I didn't even know he was missing.
He found God while serving his sentence and learned how to say all the right things. He even became a minister. And what do we like to do with all this information? Why, we love to give violent, perverted offenders light sentences, make note of their level of crazy, and then release them.
Send them on out.
Yeah. I realize I'm being a bit harsh with the state of Michigan because in all actuality, the state knew that John was most likely going to be a repeat offender. His psychological notes described him as disturbing, and the parole board denied him parole every single time he would come up. However, the state did not have a strong enough case, and since it was only involuntary manslaughter, even with that maximum sentence, they couldn't keep him behind bars for long. And because he is a good boy, at 12 years in prison, it was just over 12 years, John was unleashed on the public February 11th, 2007. The state was so aware of how deranged John was and the reality that he would be a repeat offender, they reached out to the surrounding law enforcement officials to warn them that John White was on the loose and he should be considered dangerous.
Huh.
5 counties surrounding that prison were warned of his release. I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
Once free, John moved in with his sister Christina and her family. He struggled to find a church that would allow him to do his pasteurizing.
Like with milk?
Or his penis, who knows?
That's not the kind of or we're looking for.
Well, it turns out most people don't want to hear what a convicted murderer has to say about life and God. So when they found out about his background, most people were like, we're not looking for that kind of pastor.
He should have gone in and preached to the inmates.
Yeah. But in his struggle to find a church, John met a woman named Sally Gay. Sally lived a little north of where John was staying with his sister, and she let John know her church was in need of a pastor. And away he went.
How desperate were they?
He moved into the trailer park with Sally, and then he began preaching to a church of 14. There were 14 members in that church that wanted to hear what he had to say.
How many of them were deaf?
Sally and John actually began dating. Sally really seemed to care about him. Christina said that Sally seemed to love John and John seemed to love her. And Sally also had an older daughter who was in her late teens when John came into the picture. Her name's Rebecca Jane Gray. Rebecca had a serious boyfriend and found out she was going to be a mommy. John and Sally were very supportive of Rebecca. Rebecca and her son would move, but they moved into the same trailer park, just a different trailer.
Couple doors down.
From everything I read about John, he and Sally truly seemed to love each other. They were together for about 3-4 years, and then John and Sally became engaged. John was a doting fiance to Sally. He bonded with his soon-to-be stepdaughter, Rebecca, and he absolutely adored, basically, his grandson. Conway is the little boy. He would babysit Conway. He would pick him up from daycare. Every Wednesday, John would drive to do the drop-offs with the little baby Conway and Rebecca's ex. The new family would have pizza night and movie nights. Everything seemed great. He seemed to have really turned his life around. Until one late October evening in 2012. John at this point is about 54 years old. Rebecca is now 24. They were supposed to order pizza and watch a movie, but Rebecca never showed. Instead, she blew off John because her ex, the father of her now 3-year-old son, or her boyfriend, I don't know who because there's conflicting reports. There's an interview with John's sister, Christina, that says it was Rebecca's baby daddy. But all the news articles say it was Rebecca's boyfriend. I don't know. I don't care. The point is, a man that Rebecca knew called and she canceled plans with John to go do whatever with that feller.
Okay.
John was livid with Rebecca. How dare she toss him aside like this? All the things he does for this girl and her kid, who does she think she is? And for a dude? What the heck?
Makes me think that it's an on-again, off-again relationship with the baby daddy.
Well, I know she was in a really serious relationship with her boyfriend.
Yeah, but I can see somebody being upset with that, of like, here I am taking care of your child and you're out gallivanting looking for sausage.
Pretty much.
Canceling plans that we already had. And here, let me just be picked up and put down whenever it's convenient for you.
And he was probably hangry because they were supposed to get pizza.
Well, that's the nail in the coffin.
Well, skip forward about a week or so.
He's still hungry!
We're going to skip forward about a week or so. Rebecca doesn't show up for work, and our coworkers become concerned. One of her coworkers drove out to check on Rebecca. Her trailer was decorated for Halloween. There were scarecrows, caution tape, but no sign of Rebecca. The coworker contacted Rebecca's mom, Sally. Sally and the landlord open up Rebecca's trailer in search of answers. Rebecca's purse being in the house, an area of the carpet looked freshly cleaned, and there were signs of a struggle, but no Rebecca, which made everyone concerned. At that point, 24-year-old Rebecca Gay was reported missing. So the police began investigating her disappearance. John, in the meantime, calls his sister, Christina, and says Sally's daughter, Rebecca, is missing. John said that he was supposed to help Rebecca and take Conway to drop him off for Halloween with his father, but when he showed up at Rebecca's trailer around 6:30 Halloween morning, she was still in the bathroom getting ready, and Rebecca told John, hey, Conway's still asleep, so you can just lay on the couch, take a nap until Conway wakes up. And apparently that arrangement wasn't unusual. So John said he dozed off on the couch. Rebecca left for work, and around 8 a.m., John had gotten 3-year-old Conway dressed and dropped him off with his dad. John was so concerned for Rebecca when he heard she didn't show up to work, he held a prayer group and asked his 14 members to please pray for the safe return of this wonderful young woman. Police clear both Rebecca's boyfriend and her baby daddy as possible suspects. So police immediately picked John up for questioning. The police attempted to appeal to John's better nature, and they were like, Conway, little old Conway, he's only 3. He deserves to know where his mommy is.
Right.
The police tell John, Rebecca's body is going to quickly decompose and deteriorate from the cold, wet weather. And what kind of closure is that for a 3-year-old? Meanwhile, while they're talking to John, other police just kind of peek into the back of John's truck and they see blood and a broken necklace.
Oh, no.
Which leads police to obtain a search warrant for John's truck and trailer. They also found a bag with a rubber mallet, zip ties, construction garbage bags, and women's panties.
Ew. What's with you and the panty collecting? You have a problem.
It's not me.
It is.
It's the fellers.
You like to live through them.
Ew. Nearly 24 hours after Rebecca disappeared, with police showing John photos of the blood they discovered in his truck, and John feeling backed into a corner of guilt and evidence, the ex-con pastor confessed to murdering his fiance's daughter, Rebecca. However, John had conditions in exchange for details on the murder.
Oh, no.
Condition number 1, he wanted a life sentence. Condition number 2, he wanted a guarantee that with that life sentence, he would be segregated from the other prisoners.
No deal.
Because it turns out...
You don't like dicks to the face.
Yeah, he doesn't want his ass or his face to be raped for the rest of his life.
No deal.
John tells the officers that he was fueled by 5 beers and pornographic videos of necrophilia. Just let that sink in.
No.
In his confession, John admitted that he'd been fantasizing about killing Rebecca and having sex with her body for weeks.
Can I just say I'm wildly concerned at your search history?
He also let the officers know that he knew he stripped Rebecca naked, but he couldn't remember during all of his excitement.
If she was dead or alive during that?
Yeah, he couldn't even remember if he got to have sex with Rebecca's remains.
He was so excited.
Eventually, John gave the exact location of where Rebecca's remains could be found. So this is part of John White's confession.
This morning, I deleted these downloads I had, and they were called Psycho Thriller. They're movies of guys, strangling women, basically raping them after they strangle. When I drink, that's what I want to do. And I had drank 5 beers. I remember walking across the lawn, I opened her back door, and I went in, and that's when I had the rubber mallet. And she came down the hallway because she heard the door open and close. She looked out back. I hit her with the mallet. I don't know how many times.
So what actually happened, after having 5 beers and lurking in the shadows in the wee hours of Halloween morning, John let himself in through an unlocked door on the back of Rebecca's trailer. He knew the door was unlocked because he had unlocked it the day before. Rebecca had heard the door open and close, and she got up to go investigate. It was John. Rebecca looked at John confused before he lunged at the young woman. He began striking her in the head with the rubber mallet. After beating Rebecca unconscious, John slipped a zip tie around her neck and pulled it tight, strangling his would-be stepdaughter. He then dragged Rebecca into the kitchen where he undressed the young woman. Rebecca's autopsy confirmed that there were signs of abrasions that indicated sexual assault either while she was dying or shortly after. John had murdered Rebecca and had sex with her lifeless body, all while Rebecca's toddler was asleep in the next room. When John finished, he shoved Rebecca's naked body into a contractor's garbage bag and dragged her bagged body out of the trailer and dumped her remains down into a ravine less than a mile from her trailer. John then drove Rebecca's car to a nearby bar and left it in their parking lot to try to throw off police. He then returned to Rebecca's trailer to clean up the carpet and to look after Conway. He dressed the little boy in his Halloween costume, then loaded the little guy into his pickup truck and dropped him off with the boy's father in the grocery store parking lot. He's got a thing for grocery store parking lots. John was read his rights and officially arrested for the murder of Rebecca. The authorities had John's full confession recorded, right down to him giving the exact location of Rebecca's remains, so there would be no takebacks on his confession.
Well, especially when you tell him where she's at.
Right. By March 27, 2013, John would plead guilty to second-degree murder, and during John's sentencing on April 18th, the judge told John he does not belong in society and that his actions were beyond comprehension. The judge then sentenced John Douglas White to a maximum of 56 to 85 years. Even with good behavior, the deranged man would have to serve a minimum of 46 and a half years before ever being up for parole, meaning he would most likely die in prison. This 56-year-old perverted murderer decided after only serving 4 months of his sentence to go ahead and hang himself with his bedding. His body was found hanging in his cell at 4:17 a.m. on August 28, 2013. Prison guards attempted to revive John, but he was pronounced dead at 4:38, which I kind of did I didn't really try too hard.
Would you?
No. Side note, fun fact time. The original defense attorney who botched the case that led to John being released the first time, he died before John's appeal was won. And the judge who promised Theresa, his first victim, that John would never hurt anyone again, he too died before John was released on appeal.
So as far as they know, they kept their word.
Sure do. And then also, I know this is beside the point, but this is just my nosy opinion from research. So I think that John became obsessed with Rebecca because they were spending so much time together. I think he developed a crush or an obsession with Rebecca. And Rebecca's boyfriend had bought an engagement ring and was planning on proposing to Rebecca on Halloween night.
It was his last chance.
Right. I think that's what it was, because assuming the boyfriend had told Sally, Rebecca's mom, or John, since John had been in her life for several years, that he was planning to pop the question, I think John was pissed that the boyfriend was going to steal Rebecca and Conway from him. So it was his last chance to make his move. And, but yeah, that's John Douglas White. He's a piece of shit.
Very disgusting.
The number of people
that get light sentences and then keep doing the shit they were doing before.
Yeah. I feel bad for the little boy.
Yeah.
I just thought it was sad.
Yeah.
Poor baby.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he didn't hurt the kid physically.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got.
Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.